Governor Baker is trying to make it easier for some criminal defendants who are considered dangerous to be locked up before trial. The effort follows the killing of a police officer by a suspect who was out on bail, but it's expected the bill would also affect many cases involving sexual assault. To tell us how the changes could affect the assault survivors is our guest from the Boston Area Rape Crisis Center, the Advocacy and Legislative Affairs Manager, Katia Santiago-Taylor. Thank you very much for being with us, Katia.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to start with our notion of what it's like to be either a victim or survivor of an assault. And we have the big story in the news right now, the assault allegedly by Brett Kavanaugh. And if you look at what he's going through, and if you look at what the survivor is going through, what do you see?
I think it's really interesting and very what happens usually is that survivors are put in a spot when they finally have the courage to report what happened. What they're reporting is being questioned. Why did it take so long? Why didn't they do this? Why didn't they tell other people? Whereas when we focus on the perpetrators, like, oh, why are we ruining their lives? Why is it being treated this way? Why now? So it's very unfair for survivors because someone's finally getting the courage to say, you know what, this happened to me. I am going to let someone else know that happened to me. And then they are put in a position where their life can be threatened or they're being threatened.
A lot of the time when we report on sexual assaults, it's usually, let's say, some stranger who does it to somebody, let's say in the Esplanade late at night or something. But I guess that's not typical. I mean, I guess typically this is something that happens to people who know the assailant, I guess, right?
Yeah, so statistics show that it does happen. The stranger sexual assault happened. That's the outlier case. It happens and is traumatic and is very difficult for survivors. But statistics also show that most survivors do know their perpetrators, whether they invited them to go out, they met online, they met through friends, they are family members, neighbors. The younger the survivor is, the more likelihood that there's a significant relationship between a family member or like a friend of a family. And then the older the survivor is, there's more of a chance that the person are more of an acquaintance as opposed to someone that they really know.
Now, I imagine there is a spectrum of how serious these assaults are, but if you lump it all together and you look at how the survivors felt when it was happening, what do you find? So
there's a lot of statistics that show that 58% of survivors of sexual violence thought that they were going to die during the assault. So this was a real threat to them. So even if they knew who the perpetrator was, they were in a place where I'm not going to survive this incident, this assault, this rape.
Well, turning to what the governor is proposing, I imagine this could make quite a difference to people if they're known by the assailant. So what do you see here?
I think one of the things that we have to consider is that safety and availability of services and resources is critical for survivors. We know that although most people do not report to law enforcement, when they do, they're looking to be believed, they're looking to be respected, and they're looking for information. So if we have a system, a reform, where survivors can access the information that they're looking for in a timely manner, it will be ideal. So if an offender is going to be released from custody, we want the survivor to be notified if they choose to be notified right away. So they can come up with a plan, so they can plan for their safety, they can reach out to the people that are going to be able to protect them if they need protection. The other aspect of the legislation that can be very useful for survivors or important for survivors is that if someone is really dangerous, then extending or increases the number of charges that a dangerousness hearing can be filed on. So some cases that typically right now you can file 58A on a sexual assault related case, hopefully you will be able to file it if needed.
This is BNN News, and we're talking with Katia Santiago-Taylor from the Boston Area Rape Crisis Center. Katia, how do you judge dangerousness? I mean, you might have how dangerous a person is on the basis of one case, but maybe these people have a history too.
And it's important to bring it up to hearing, if there's a hearing. Not just by a piece of paper, but trying to bring people that can testify to how dangerous someone can be, the violence, previous police reports, testimony from people that have witnessed some of the violence, testimony of the survivor if needed, if available.
Of course, the determination, this is not just shortly after somebody has been charged. It could be several weeks later. Maybe they violate some condition of release. I mean, couldn't people fall through the cracks pretty easily?
Yes. And hopefully some of this legislation will be able to fix that, especially for survivors of sexual violence. Again, our focus is survivors of sexual violence. We know that this could be used for all crimes, but we just want to keep our survivors of domestic interpersonal violence safe.
Now, of course, we're talking in criminal justice policy these days a lot of the time. Let's avoid locking up people, especially before trial, if it can be avoided. Are you afraid that this new provision, if it passes, might even be abused?
Yes, and we want to make sure that it's not overused or misused. We want to make sure that people that are arrested, underserved communities of colors are not targeted by this. Our focus is that survivors are going to feel safe, and the survivors can access the resources. And we're worried to a degree because we don't want this to, again, be misused or overused.
I know survivors need things that can only come from outside the criminal justice system. I want to go back to the very first thing that you've probably picked up, maybe when they call your hotline. They don't want to report something to authorities. Why is that usually?
I think there's many different reasons. Many survivors feel that they're not going to be believed, feel that they're ashamed that in some way it was their fault. They're embarrassed of what happened to them. They're embarrassed because they're afraid of what kind of questions they're going to be asked by the criminal legal system or law enforcement. They feel that they're going to be blamed for what happened. So there's a wide range of emotions, and if we see what is happening in the media right now, the reaction is, why did it take so long? What were they doing? What did they do to put themselves in that position? And it should not be that reaction, because there's nothing that anyone can do to put themselves in that position.
Well, I know the criminal justice system can punish or lock up an assailant, but what do survivors really want? I mean, don't they need some kind of healing, maybe?
I think it's important to highlight that procedural justice is what most survivors are looking for, is to be believed, is to be treated with respect. It doesn't matter if the case goes forward in the criminal legal system or not, as long as they feel that they were believed and respected through the process. They were informed of all the steps, they were given access to resources and help access them. That will increase their emotional and wellness healing overall.
We should mention finally, for people who do need help, have questions, you've got a hotline, right?
We have a hotline 24 hours, 7 days a week, and we have multiple services for survivors, significant others, service providers, and family members.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Katia Santiago-Taylor from the Boston Area Rape Crisis Center.